Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today, my dear friends and subscribers and visitors to my channel, I would like to talk about a recent tragedy in Russia, and that is the bombing of the Pedagogical Institute, or College for Future Teachers, College for Girls. And the title that I chose is Fallen Girls Mobilize Russia. Now, the reason for that title and for this discussion is that sometimes there are events that have unintended and dramatic consequences. Sometimes it's a new leader or a new weapon or some kind of happening that changes overnight the very nature of the event and induce new forces and new determination. And this is exactly that kind of an event. Now, I usually watch what happens in the Russian-Ukraine war, and when I make a new video, it's usually about some changes. Now, if you look at my Ukraine war playlist, you would see dozens and dozens of videos covering the war from the very beginning with every detail that happened. But this is one of those moments. What happened a few days ago in Lugansk, Starobelsk town, profoundly changed the course of the war. This is my judgment. And this is why it's important to analyze what happened, why it happened, and the consequences that it may have. Now, what happened actually is covered quite well, except some details were not covered in Western media, and as far as I heard, CNN even refused to send in the delegation or team to cover it. Russian authorities invited Western diplomats to look at what happened, and what happened was that a drone attack hit a dormitory for girls or young women studying to become teachers. As a result, 21, by the latest count, were killed, and 60 altogether were wounded, or 60 altogether wounded or killed. Now, the Ukrainian side said that this was a mistake, that they were supposed to hit some kind of a drone operation facility nearby. But the Russian representative at the United Nations, Nebezia, in his report said many times that there's no doubt whatsoever that it was a deliberate attack, because there were 16 waves of drones that attacked the college, and they also found in the debris some kind of navigation equipment that received navigation from the satellites. They call them Musk satellites. And that proves beyond any doubt that the targeting was done by the Americans and through the navigation system of satellite navigation by American satellites of Musk. And also that it was a deliberate targeting of this particular college. Now, one skeptics might say, why would they want to hit a college? Why would they want to hit innocent young teachers? And for that, we have to go back into some of the speeches and practices of the Ukrainian side for the last several months. Now, what is quite well known is that the Ukrainians are increasing their drone strikes, and the entire Western media celebrates the Ukrainian capacity to deliver harder and harder, bigger and bigger drone waves of attacks on Russian interior. Now, there's frequently now, almost every day, 600. The goal is to reach 1,000 drones hits on Russia daily. Now, also, we all know that at the beginning of the year, the British Foreign Minister proudly declared that Britain would deliver 100,000 drones to Ukraine in 2026. And in addition, we also know quite well that Ukrainian drones are not Ukrainian anymore, and that the vast majority is produced in European Union, in Germany, in Britain, and various other places. And it is in this context that the Russian Ministry of Defense published a list of Ukrainian drone manufacturers in EU with their addresses. So far, none of these addresses have been hit. So these are European and British drones delivered to Ukraine, and now let's look at the goals. And the goals are also no secret. They were specified by President Zelensky at the end of winter, where he said, "We want the Russians to suffer as we do." So the goal was to hit what is in military terminology referred to as soft targets, which is unprotected targets, which is apartment buildings, and also the oil and the gas facilities, because they're very easy targets. Because if you have an oil storage, it's highly flammable, and a simple grenade can ignite a huge fire that would be very hard to extinguish. And this is exactly what the Ukrainians have been doing systematically over the last several months. Now, I've covered that in many of my previous videos. Basically, what happens is that Ukrainian drones either fly undetected over Russian territory, which is strange from the point of view of Russian specialists, or, which is what the Russian observers claim, they fly over Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and then cross into Russian territory, and then hit Ust-Luga storage facility and a terminal port for Russian tankers, which is only 25 kilometers from Estonian border. In any case, these were the successful Ukrainian hits that they've been parading and boasting about over the last several months. What is less known, and that is the soft targets that are hit daily, and I'm saying daily, in the provinces bordering on Ukraine, and that is Belgorod and Kursk and Bryansk. And if you want details, you can open the websites of the governors of these provinces, and then have an automatic translation engaged, so that you see the endless reports on civilian targets hit by the Ukrainian forces in these provinces. The reason is simple: they're very close, and it takes only a few minutes flight across the demarcation line to find oneself in Kursk or Bryansk. In other words, every day there are 2 or 3 or 4 persons killed or wounded in these provinces, and that has been going on for quite some time. Now, again, it is Zelensky who put it in these words, to make the Russians to suffer. The other officially proclaimed goal is to sow fear among the Russians and to convince them that the authorities, the власть, cannot defend them. In other words, the long-term strategic objective of these strikes is to incite Russian population against the government, and the ultimate goal is to blow up Russia from within, to stage a rebellion against Putin, and in that way to win the war. That is why these soft targets, civilian targets, have been done over the last several months. Now, the interesting thing is that it didn't work out, and the result is exactly the opposite of what was intended. What we also know is that as a result, Putin announced a drastic new and devastating hit on Kiev, Again, the targets were still quite military. There was no targeting of decision-making centers as so many people in Russia demand. No, it was still in the form of a warning. Oreshnik Oreshnik missile was used, hypersonic missile, unstoppable, that did hit a military facility. And then there were a few days ago the tests of Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles, hypersonic, that can hit anything, anywhere in the world in a few minutes, which was another warning. But still, it seems to me that there is, despite just continuation of the warnings, there is something new in the way the war has been conducted. And it is several Western observers who now say that Putin has acquired a new method of fighting a war, that he finally found determination to act. Now, obviously, Putin is very attentive to the public opinion. And in this case, he could not have not acted. In other words, the death of these girls triggered a kind of a dramatic reaction, which just generated such anger and such wrath and rage in Russian society that he had to act, and he did begin. But for my purposes, as a Russian analyst, what I like to do is to measure the mood of the country, to test what people are saying and what they actually want by what they're saying. And what is clear to me is that this is an absolutely dramatic game changer events in terms of Russian society attitudes. Before, we still heard, whether we should continue negotiations with Zelensky or whether we shouldn't. Some people were saying we should, other people said it's useless, the Anchorage is dead, the spirit of Anchorage. Now there's no one who wants any negotiations with what they call a criminal neo-Nazi regime. And that is the bottom line today. The message to EU is that stay away, because we have Oreshnik and we have Sarmat. The message to Zelensky, if you do that, then we will respond 3-fold and devastate Kiev if necessary in order to stop these attacks. Another very interesting episode is exactly in the last couple of days, there was a reburial of Melnik. Melnik was an associate of Stepan Bandera at the time of World War II, and he is a known neo-Nazi. His name is associated with the Babi Yar massacre of 50,000 Kiev Jews who were murdered by the Nazis and their Ukrainian accomplices. And even the Israeli embassy expressed protest over the reburial with honor of Mr. Melnik. European Union prefers to keep silence on the honors delivered to the neo-Nazi collaborator, a hero in modern-day Ukraine. Nevertheless, this was a total insult to do it now and to do it in this provocative way that only underscores how much modern Ukrainian regime is indeed neo-Nazi, if this is what their heroes are. Now back to Russian society. For the first time, I heard a demand on air by Russian generals in the program Krasnaya Linia, which is Red Line, which says we need to kill Zelensky. This is the first time that the entire Zelensky regime should be eliminated, and all those, and this is official position, all those guilty of the murder of the girls have to be hunted down or brought to trial. In other words, there is this rage in Russia over this event. And similar to the murder of the girls in Iran by the Israeli-American attack, it seems to me that the murder of the girls in Starobelsk, Lugansk province is the same kind of generator of incredible rage and determination of the Russians to conduct the war to speedy and crushing defeat for the Zelensky regime. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon with another edition of Issues of Contemporary Politics. And also, as always, I urge you to read my book, From Vladimir Lenin to Vladimir Putin, Russia in Search of Its Identity. It is in the description. Goodbye.